Welcome to today's deep dive. I'm your host, and today we are getting into something that honestly completely challenges how we think about success.
I'm really excited to be here, and yeah, it really does, because, when we think about genius, we usually picture a very specific kind of person, right?
Right, like someone who masters complex equations or builds revolutionary tech.
Exactly. You ace the hardest tests, and the world just kind of hands you a trophy. We have this cultural assumption that a super high intellect basically guarantees you're going to master your life.
Like it's a universal skeleton key or something.
Yeah, exactly. It's a comforting thought. I mean, we want to believe that if someone has a towering IQ, they just automatically possess the cognitive machinery to make perfectly rational decisions, especially with everyday practical stuff.
Right, I mean, if you could invent a piece of technology that changes the world, managing a basic checking account should be completely trivial.
You'd think so.
But the moment you step into the world of personal wealth, that assumption just completely falls apart. Like, certified geniuses can look completely foolish when they're confronted with a bank balance.
Which brings us right to the core of what we're looking at today. We are pulling insights from Morgan Housel's book, The Psychology of Money.
It's such a great book.
It really is. And our mission today is to figure out why incredibly smart people frequently self-destruct with their money. We're exploring the idea that financial success is actually, it's a soft skill. It's not a hard science at all.
And I want to establish a rule right off the bat here, because the financial industry loves to hide behind this massive wall of intimidating jargon.
Oh, the acronyms alone.
Right. Acronyms, charts, the complex math that just makes most people's eyes glaze over. So we are establishing a strict, simple English rule for our discussion today.
I love that.
Yeah, we are going to break down every single concept into everyday language because if you're listening right now, you won't need an economics degree to get to the aha moments today. The whole premise we're exploring is that doing well with money has very little to do with your intelligence and pretty much everything to do with how you behave.
And behavior is notoriously difficult to teach, right? Even to the smartest people on the planet. I mean, handing someone a fancy spreadsheet does not magically give them control over their own impulses.
No, definitely not.
And Housel illustrates this beautifully by comparing two totally different individuals on absolute opposite ends of the spectrum.
Let's start with the first guy. He was a technology executive. This guy was a certified genius. He actually designed and patented a key component in Wi-Fi routers when he was in his 20s.
Wow, in his 20s.
Yeah. So he starts companies, sells them, makes an absolute fortune. But his relationship with that wealth was just completely unmoored from reality. Like he would carry around a stack of $100 bills, several inches thick, just to impress people.
Just walking around with a brick of cash.
Literally a brick.
Well, the anecdotes about his spending are just staggering. I mean, he once handed a hotel employee thousands of dollars in cash, just told him to go buy gold coins from a jewelry store.
Right.
And then he and his friends went down to the Pacific Ocean and literally skipped those $1,000 gold coins across the water like rocks.
You've got to be kidding me.
No, just skipping them and arguing over whose gold coin went the furthest.
That is insane. And there's another story where he shatters a lamp in a hotel restaurant. The manager comes over, tells him the lamp cost $500 and needs to be replaced.
Okay, a reasonable request.
Right, but instead of handling it like a normal person, the executive pulls that brick of cash out of his pocket, peels off $5,000, hands it to the manager, and basically tells him to get out of his face.
Wow.
Yeah, he's using money not as a tool for, stability, but as a weapon for his own ego. And obviously, unsurprisingly, he eventually went completely broke.
Just completely broke, which is wild when you compare it to the other guy, Ronald Reed. I mean, his life could not be more different from that tech executive.
He was a janitor.
Exactly. Reed was a janitor. He spent 25 years fixing cars at a gas station, and then another 17 years sweeping floors at a JCPenney.
Sweeping floors.
Yeah. He bought a two-bedroom house for $12,000 when he was 38 and just lived there for the rest of his life. You know what his primary hobby was?
What?
Chopping firewood.
Chopping his own firewood. It's just a completely ordinary, quiet life.
Right. But when Ronald Reed died in 2014 at the age of 92, he made international headlines. Because out of the millions of Americans who passed away that year, fewer than 4,000 had a net worth of over $8 million.
Wait, $8 million?
$8 million. Ronald Reed, the janitor who chopped his own firewood, was one of them. He left $2 million to his stepkids and over $6 million to his local hospital and library.
That is just incredible. How did he even do that?
He literally just saved what little he could, put it into stable companies, and let time do the heavy lifting for decades.
Okay, so the contrast here gets even sharper when you realize who else was in the news right around the time Ronald Read died. This guy named Richard Fiscone.
Oh,
Yeah, Fiscone was a Harvard-educated executive at Merrill Lynch. He had an MBA, he made the 40 under 40 list, and he was so successful that he retired in his 40s.
so basically the exact opposite of a gas station attendant.
Literally the pinnacle of financial education. But he borrowed heavily to expand this massive 18,000 square foot mansion. It had 2 elevators, 7 garages, and the maintenance costs alone were $90,000 a month.
$90,000 a month just to keep the lights on.
Yeah. And then the 2008 financial crisis hit. High debt, illiquid assets, and Fiscone's elite financial standing basically turned to dust. He ended up telling a bankruptcy judge he had no income, and his mansion was sold in a foreclosure auction for just a fraction of its value.
I mean, think about the mechanics of what happened there. You have a Harvard-educated finance executive who loses absolutely everything, while a janitor quietly amasses a philanthropic fortune.
It's an outcome that defies logic in literally any other profession. Think about it. You would never see a story about a janitor stepping into an operating room and performing a better heart transplant than a Harvard-trained surgeon.
No, of course not.
Or a gas station attendant designing a safer skyscraper than a top architect. Because in those fields, technical knowledge is the absolute barrier to entry.
Right, because medicine and engineering, those are hard sciences. Finance is not. It is driven by human behavior. I mean, Ronald Read had patience, and Richard Fiscone succumbed to greed. And in the arena of money, those behavioral traits are so dominant that they completely eclipse any gap in formal education or IQ.
But that raises a massive question. If a humble janitor can outpace a Harvard executive just through sheer patience, why on earth do we teach finance as if it's a complex calculus problem?
Well, Housel actually zeroes in on this exact flaw by comparing the financial industry to the healthcare industry. Modern medicine is a triumph of hard science, right?
Right.
We map the human genome, we develop new surgical techniques, and global life expectancy goes up. The human condition objectively improves because we replace outdated medical ideas.
And the healthier.
Exactly. But the financial industry operates on a completely different track. Like, over the last few decades, the smartest mathematical minds in the world have been recruited into finance.
Oh yeah, financial engineering became the top draw at Ivy League schools. We've got supercomputers and brilliant minds building these incredibly complex algorithms.
Right. But there's zero evidence that this massive concentration of genius has made the average person any better at managing personal debt or preparing for retirement. And the reason is a fundamental miscategorization. We teach people about money as if it were physics, like it's governed by unbreakable laws and predictable formulas.
But it's not.
No, money is psychology. It is governed by human emotions and nuance and irrationality.
I mean, the allure of the spreadsheet is really powerful, though. Treating money like physics gives us a sense of control. You can teach someone the basic math of a 6-month emergency fund. Or you can show them a chart proving they should save 10% of their income. The math is totally flawless on paper.
On paper, sure. But that flawless math tells you absolutely nothing about the sheer panic vibrating in your chest when the stock market suddenly drops 30% and you're terrified your family's future is evaporating.
Yeah, panic doesn't care about a spreadsheet.
Exactly. Voltaire actually captured this perfectly. He said, "History never repeats itself. Man always does. We just keep inventing new financial instruments. But the human hardware reacting to them remains identically flawed."
Okay, I want to challenge this idea slightly, though. If we can't rely on the math and just plugging data into a formula doesn't guarantee the right behavioral outcome, then what is the actual driver here? Because we aren't all just walking around making random guesses with our bank accounts.
No, we aren't guessing. But our decisions are being filtered through an incredibly distorted lens. Housel frames this by pointing out that your personal first-hand experiences with money make up about 0.0000001% of what has actually happened in the history of the world.
That is a lot of zeros.
Right. But those tiny localized experiences dictate about 80% how you think the entire world works.
It's kind of like looking through a tiny keyhole into this cavernous, massive room. You peer through, you see a 1-inch sliver of a single wall, and you just confidently walk away convinced you know exactly how the entire room is decorated. And the wild part is every single person on Earth is looking through a different keyhole.
Exactly. And a prime example of this keyhole effect is John F. Kennedy's presidential campaign in the 1960s.
Oh, the Great Depression story.
Yeah. A reporter asked him what he remembered about the Great Depression. And Kennedy just honestly admitted he had no firsthand knowledge of the suffering. His family was incredibly wealthy, and they actually expanded their wealth during that era.
Right, they didn't lose everything.
No, the only direct impact he saw was his father hiring extra gardeners just to give local men a job. He didn't truly grasp the devastation until he read about it as a student at Harvard.
Which, if you think about it, became a serious political liability for him. Because voters instinctively know that reading about the Depression in a textbook is profoundly different from the actual emotional trauma of losing your farm or losing your life savings. He eventually needed his experiences in World War II to forge any real emotional connection with the struggles of the average citizen.
And the data strongly supports this anchoring effect, too. There was a 2006 study by the National Bureau of Economic Research, and they analyzed 50 years of American financial habits.
Now, classical economics suggests people should invest based on their long-term goals and current market conditions, right?
Right, the logical spreadsheet approach.
Exactly. But the study revealed the complete opposite. People's lifetime investment decisions are heavily anchored to the specific economic conditions they lived through in their late teens and early 20s. So it really is just a lottery of your birth year.
Pretty much.
The historical timelines Housel provides make this incredibly clear. So if you're listening, imagine being born in 1950. During your most impressionable young adult years, the stock market essentially flatlined. It went absolutely nowhere.
Just stagnant.
Right. Now imagine being born in 1970. During your teens and 20s, the S&P 500 increased almost tenfold. Those two groups of people are going to navigate the rest of their lives with deeply ingrained, fundamentally opposite views on whether investing in stocks is a prudent wealth-building strategy or just a reckless gamble.
And the exact same dynamic applies to inflation. Say you were born in 1960. You lived your early adult life through the 1970s, experiencing skyrocketing prices, literally watching the purchasing power of your paycheck erode by the day.
Yeah, so to you, inflation is this lurking monster.
Exactly. But for someone born in 1990, inflation was historically negligible for their entire early life.
Yeah.
It barely registered as a threat. This is actually why the legendary bond manager Bill Gross viewed bonds as wealth-generating machines. His career perfectly aligned with a massive, multi-decade drop in interest rates.
Right, but his father's generation.
His father's generation was scarred by high inflation, so they viewed those exact same bonds as wealth incinerators.
And it stretches far beyond just the year you were born, too. Geography and demographics heavily dictate what you see through your keyhole. Like looking at the unemployment data from the fallout of the 2008 crisis. The national average in late 2009 hovered around 10%. But that aggregate number hides wildly different realities.
Oh, absolutely.
For young African-American men without a high school diploma, the unemployment rate was nearly 50%. But for older Caucasian women with a college degree, it was just 4%.
Or consider the geographical divide during World War II. I mean, the United States saw its stock market double and its economy completely boom as a manufacturing powerhouse.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, citizens in Germany were attempting to survive on 1,000 calories a day in the ruins of bombed-out cities.
Right.
And we are reporting on this objectively, regardless of the politics involved. But these aren't just historical footnotes. They are the crucibles in which entire generations forge their fundamental beliefs about risk, safety, and money.
And when you realize how fragmented these realities are, it unlocks this massive realization about human behavior. No one is actually crazy. When millions of people are looking through completely different keyholes, a financial decision that looks utterly insane to me might check every single logical box for you, just based on the world you've experienced.
Housel uses a really jarring example to demonstrate how wide this gap in perspective can be. It involved the massive Foxconn electronics factories in Taiwan. Now, these factories faced severe outrage from Western observers over harsh working conditions. But a nephew of a Chinese worker at one of these factories offered a completely different baseline. He explained that before taking the factory job, his aunt had been working as a prostitute.
Wow. So from her perspective, enduring harsh factory conditions for low pay was actually an incredible leap forward in her quality of life compared to the trauma of her previous circumstances.
Right.
Again, staying entirely neutral in the politics here, but Western observers were evaluating the factory job against a baseline of safe, regulated corporate employment, She was evaluating it against sheer survival.
Exactly. It forces you to acknowledge that what appears as exploitation through one keyhole is viewed as a saving grace through another.
Hmm.
And translating that concept of relative baselines to more common financial behaviors explains things that otherwise seem mathematically absurd.
Like what?
Lottery tickets. They are the perfect everyday example.
Oh, the statistics on the lottery are absolutely fascinating because the lowest income households in the U.S. spend an average of $412 a year on lottery tickets.
Which is a lot of money.
It's roughly 4 times the amount spent by the highest earners. And the brutal irony here is that a massive percentage of those exact same low-income households report that they could not come up with $400 for an unexpected emergency.
Right. So looking purely at the spreadsheet, it is a terrible allocation of capital. Spending your only emergency buffer on a statistical impossibility just defies all financial logic.
But when we evaluate the psychology behind it, the spreadsheet becomes completely irrelevant. If you were trapped in a cycle of living paycheck to paycheck, saving enough to meaningfully change your life feels impossible.
Yeah, it feels hopeless.
Exactly. A higher paying job feels out of reach. Affording a home in a safe neighborhood or paying for college seems like a fantasy. Wealthier people take the attainability of those things for granted. So when a low-income individual buys a lottery ticket, they aren't purchasing a financial asset with an expected return.
No, they are purchasing a momentary dream. It is the only tangible access point to the hope of a comfortable life that feels completely walled off to them otherwise.
They are checking a deeply ingrained psychological box, not a mathematical one. And once you understand the emotional utility of that purchase, it stops looking like sheer madness, right? It starts looking like a very human coping mechanism.
It really does. And this brings us to the final layer of complexity in our relationship with money. We are all operating with these incredibly limited, emotionally biased keyhole views of the world. But on top of that, the entire modern financial system we are trying to navigate is practically a newborn baby in the span of human history.
Which sounds counterintuitive at first. I mean, currency has been around since, 600 BC? We've been trading coins for millennia.
We have been trading, yes. But the modern infrastructure of personal finance, things like long-term investing, consumer credit, and a multi-decade retirement, those are completely new inventions.
Retirement is a massive one. The cultural expectation today is that you work until your 60s and then spend 20 or 30 years relaxing. But before World War II, that concept basically didn't exist for the average person. You worked until you were physically unable to, and then you died.
Right.
In the 1940s, the labor force participation rate for men over the age of 65 was still well above 50%.
Social Security was only created in the 1930s, and the very first monthly check issued in 1940 was for $22.54. It wasn't designed to fund luxury cruises. It was a baseline safety net against absolute destitution.
Wait, this actually busts the very pervasive cultural myth because you constantly hear people romanticize the mid-20th century, right? They claim that back in the day, everyone had this secure, cushy, private pension from their employer that just took care of them for life.
Oh, the historical data completely dismantles that myth. Even as late as 1975, only a quarter of individuals over the age of 65 had any pension income whatsoever.
Wow, only a quarter.
Yeah, and for that fortunate minority, it only accounted for about 15% of their total household income. So the modern expectation that every citizen should manage their own investments to fund a dignified, decades-long retirement, that didn't truly take root until the 1980s.
And the tools we use to achieve that are shockingly young. The 401k, which is basically the absolute bedrock of the American retirement system, wasn't introduced until 1978.
Right.
The Roth IRA was established in 1998. It's barely old enough to rent a car. And index funds, which democratize market returns for the average worker, have only been around for about half a century.
The consumer debt market exploded on a similar timeline, too.
Yeah.
The widespread use of credit cards and the standardization of 30-year mortgage really only took off after the GI Bill following World War II.
Even the student loan crisis is entirely unprecedented. College tuition has risen roughly fourfold since 1940, adjusted for inflation. So we have millions of teenagers taking on massive non-dischargeable debt before their prefrontal cortex is even fully developed.
Yeah.
And we have absolutely zero historical precedent to look back on for guidance. We're just winging it.
Housel offers a brilliant analogy to put this timeline into perspective. Think about dogs. Dogs were domesticated roughly 10,000 years ago, yet they still occasionally act on wild instincts, right?
Sure.
Humans have had, at most, a 50-year run with the modern financial system. We are trying to navigate 401ks, variable interest rates, and algorithmic trading using brains evolved for scarcity and tribal survival.
We are holding ourselves to an impossible standard. We expect ourselves to act like perfectly rational, emotionless software programs, when in reality, we are all just novices fumbling through a system that was essentially invented yesterday.
Exactly. The friction between our ancient emotional hardware and this brand new financial software is where all the mistakes happen. Understanding this it's not an excuse for reckless behavior, but it provides vital context for why managing money is so inherently difficult.
So when we synthesize all of this, what is the ultimate takeaway for you, the listener? Well, by stripping away the jargon and just looking at the behavioral mechanics in simple English, the clearest action item is to cultivate some grace. Stop beating yourself up over past financial missteps and just recognize the sheer complexity of what you are trying to navigate.
Yeah, you are operating on a tiny fraction of the world's experiences, trying to master tools that have barely existed for a single generation. Recognizing your own keyhole, acknowledging the specific economic eras and environments that biased your thinking. That is the first step toward better behavior.
Right.
It creates the mental space needed to pause before you panic sell during a market dip or before you buy something you don't need just to simulate a feeling of safety.
It reorients the goal from being the smartest person in the room to being the most resilient. But as we wrap up, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over. We've established that our financial worldview is deeply anchored by the random economic luck of our birth year, right? And that we are currently struggling to master retirement tools invented in the 1970s and 90s.
And the system never stops evolving.
Exactly. So here's the question. What completely new, invisible financial shift is happening right now in real time that is secretly rewiring the psychological biases of the next generation without us even noticing? Are the young adults of the day forging a completely new relationship with value, risk, and stability that will look utterly insane to us in 20 years? Because whatever that shift is, it won't be mastered by the people with the highest IQs. It will be mastered by those who can adapt their behavior. Thanks for taking the deep dive with us today.